Once again, I want to welcome each of you to Science Symposium 2019, sponsored by Urantia Foundation, here at 533 Uversa. This time, Tom Allen is going to present. Tom is a lifelong believer in the love of Jesus and God, and in the teachings of the Urantia Papers since 1973, when he first came in contact with these supernal teachings. As a young college student, Tom studied under the tutelage of an early generation of readers, including Berkeley Eliot and others in Oklahoma City Urantia Society. After receiving a bachelor's degree in philosophy in 1974, Tom pursued a career in nursing. Passion for astronomy and philosophy has led to the publication of his book, The Great Debate on the Scale of Orvonton, currently available on Amazon. He also has a Vimeo on the scale of Urantia, and that's at vimeo.com 343-356-366. Tom and his wife Karen host a study group in their home each Sunday night. Now semi-retired at age 67, Tom wishes to rededicate his energies into Urantia scholarship and leadership as we pass the torch of organizational and philosophical wisdom into the hands of a new generation of young Urantia book believers. Tom is currently serving a 9-year term in the General Council of the Urantia Book Fellowship and holds a post on the Judicial Chair. I give you Tom Allen.
Thank you, Dr. Zaire. A couple nights ago, Joshua and I went to Savat Nova and got to see Bob Salone play the piano. And Josh actually played too. It was really a nice evening. It was a wonderful evening. Well, Bob came over during a break and he was talking to us and he said, Joshua, what is your topic going to be on? And Joshua told him, and then he looked at me and said, and Tom, what's yours going to be on? I leaned forward and looked him straight in the eye and said, I know where Uversa is. And he kind of went back and said, boy, that's a great title for your talk. And I said, oh, no, we're much more academic. It's the Intergalactic Wanderer in the Direction of Links. So, here I go. You know, the universe frames are erroneous to a greater or a lesser degree. They always are, no matter what. So I joyfully acknowledge the presence of error in my conclusions. So I'm wrong, okay? I'll admit it right up front. Hopefully it's with a lesser degree, but we'll see. My hypothesis is that Uversa is located within globular cluster NGC 2419. NGC 2419 is a globular cluster. Is located in the direction of Lynx. And here's the constellation Lynx. And Lynx is it's named after a lynx, not because it's any kind of looks like a lynx. It's named that way because you must have the eyesight of a lynx in order to see the constellation Lynx. But here, down here at the bottom, if I can get is right there, is where NGC 2419 is. Let me see if that thing's 10. Right there, that's where NGC 2419 is in the relationship to Lynx. Just above Gemini, and it's in the area here where a Lynx is. Every constellation has its own domain, and this is in the domain of Lynx. So, isn't that gorgeous? That's a Hubble picture of NGC 2419. I just love that picture. That is such a gorgeous picture. NGC 2419 is one of the brightest. It is one of the most massive. and it is one of the most distant of all the globular clusters surrounding Urantia. And there are about 150 of these globular clusters that surround the Milky Way. And I believe that NGC 2419 is the best candidate for the location of Uversa. I just love that picture. You're going to see it again and again, I'm afraid. The way that this is what I call the Triad of Verification. It is a research technique that I use to utilize to seek a universe frame which is with a lesser degree of error. This research template helps to better justify, synthesize, and unify all aspects of reality that are available to us. So what they are, first of all, of course, epical revelation, the Urantia papers. And number two, we got to search out and find out what was happening in the early 20th century in terms of the science, cosmology, and cosmology. The historical facts, things they knew, things they didn't know. And number three, current science. That's what's happening today. It's what we really pin our future on in terms of comprehending more and more about the synthesis of this reality that whatever it is we're seeking to understand. So choosing only one or two of these approaches to construct a viable universe frame will fail to provide enough insight into the complicated attempt to unify and synthesize reality. All three approaches must be scrutinized and harmonized to provide increasingly true cosmological accuracy in a stable universe framework that has a lesser degree of error. All right, we're going to start out with some facts. The anticenter is an important concept that I want you to really understand in order to verify some of the assumptions I've made further on down the line. The anticenter is the direction in space which is directly opposite to the galactic center, and from any position within the Milky Way. In other words, there can be a anticenter any direction through this star, through, of course, the sun. Now, if you look, there's the sun right there. And if you look at the galactic center and you follow a line directly here, you're going to go straight out at the anticenter, and guess what is at the other end, way over here? NGC 2419 and the constellation Lynx. It's in the direct direction of the anticenter. So that's an important concept to know further on down the line as we get into this. Now, first of all, I want to do all the little exercise. You know, don't get complacent here, don't get sleepy, because you're going to have to do some work. I want you all to look directly right there. Put your eyes forward. Get your set your body straight. Come on. Set your body straight. Look straight at it. Straight at it. Your eyes are focused directly on it, are they? Now, everybody, at that angle, I want you to turn your head around completely. You can swivel your chairs and look the complete opposite direction. Is everybody doing that? Now, everybody is looking at the galactic center. Okay? Now, you understand what the anticenter is now, right? So NGC 2419 is along the anticenter through Urantia, and this is what I call through the dense diameter of the Milky Way, from the galactic center through Urantia toward the constellation Lynx. Now, researchers recently, Massar, in 2017 did some great research on NGC 2419. And that research used the Hubble telescope, and it also used the Gaia telescope to really focus in on and determining what a lot of data about NGC 2419. And it was the first really conclusive study about some of the proper motions of NGC 2419. And it was really specific. And I would not be able to do this talk today if that research had not been done. If anybody wanted to discover, had made an idea that NGC 2419 was indeed Uversa, they would have had to have just come up with it off the top of their heads. But I've got some research here I'm going to get into. First of all, we've got to get into some facts about NGC 2419. NGC 2419 is the fifth most distant globular cluster. It's likewise one of the largest and the brightest. Those are near stars. They're not in they're not in the cluster. Those are just near stars right there. So it's just a magnificent cluster. It's just one of the best, and it's far, far away. So here is this is done by some journalist, and he didn't really do it right because the anticenter would really be out this way towards with the way the Milky Way is done here. But anyway, this does give you a perspective about how far away that globular cluster is from the Milky Way. It's right here. And what you need to realize about this is that it, well, I think at the next one, I think that would, no, this is one I need. So if we start there on it, right there, it is right, one of the facts about it that they've determined is that NGC 2419 is in rotation around the Milky Way. And it goes in this direction, and I'm going to have to lose it, and it goes all the way around the Milky Way, over the pole of the Milky Way. It goes all the way around and comes right back up to there, back up. And it takes 3 billion years for it to make one polar circuit around the Milky Way. Count them, 3 billion years to make it. That's 1 year for Uversa, as I call it.
In clockwise or counterclockwise?
Your choice. Well, no, it would be clockwise. It would be over the way I did it, because I'll get that fact here to you in a minute. But first of all, I want you to see this picture here because I was recently a star student up there. I went to the courtesy colony on Uversa, and I got this postcard, and wanted to share that with you. And that's the way it looks from NGC 2419. And you see right there, I've got the they gave me a little special one, and see right there, that's 533 Diversity Parkway. I've got it focused right on it, right there. That's where we are. So that was real nice of them to let me have that, and I came right back for this, and here I am. Now some more facts. We need facts. We've got to have facts. These are some very important facts to know. First of all, Harlow Shapley, who is also a source person for some of the stuff in the Urantia papers, Harlow Shapley estimated that the distance in 1922 was 168,000 light years away. Walter Babe came along a little bit later in 1935 and determined that it was 185,000 light years distant. Now, with this recent research, the radial velocity of NGC 2419 is about 20 kilometers per second in our direction. It's coming towards us, okay? And that's pretty slow. 20 kilometers per second is not very fast. But it's, as a matter of fact, Harlow Shapley is the one who named it the Intergalactic. He called it the Intergalactic Tramp. but it's been kind of translated into the Intergalactic Wanderer, because when he saw it, he didn't think it was moving. And he thought it was moving on its own, but it had no connection to the Milky Way. He just figured it was just tramping through the universe on its own. So that's where it got that. It's got that. It's famously called now the Intergalactic Wanderer, even though it is definitely associated with the Milky Way. So here's some more important facts. It does, as I mentioned, have a 3 billion year elliptical orbit over the pole of the Milky Way. Right now, its present distance estimate is 270,000 light years. That's how far away it is right now. The furthest distance from Urantia at apogee, the furthest distance it is from us, is 319,000 light years. The closest approach to Urantia, which is probably on its way now, is 172,000 light years. So that makes the average distance from Urantia 245,000 light years. And that's an important number for some of my assumptions later for you to get into. So before we really go any further, I have 4 suppositions to posit about my framework on the scale of Orvonton. Because to justify NGC 2419 as the location of Uversa, this framework must be defined with a greater or lesser degree of error. So again, I'm going to be wrong, okay? So I have 4 suppositions on the speculations on the scale of Orvonton. And if it would take a 3-day intensive seminar for me to really get into these 4 suppositions, but I do get into it in my book, which Dr. Zayer mentioned a minute ago. And I do have that Vimeo, which, if you really want to get into it, it's really arcane, really difficult, but what else is Urantia Papers going to do to us but give us something tough, something hard, something that we have to work on. I mean, they could make it easy. They could have made this real easy, but no. They make us work for it, and I love them for it. There's no doubt. All right. Number 1. The Milky Way is the only part of Orvonton that is organized and partially inhabited. Number 2. With the premise that the Milky Way is the only place in our superuniverse that is organized and partially inhabited, then the word Orvonton is used exclusively in the Urantia Papers as the name of Orvonton, the Milky Way. The inhabited and organized Milky Way is named Orvonton. The Milky Way is the only organized and inhabited area of the 7th segment of the grand universe. 10 major sectors whirl within the Milky Way. And you see that's where our sun is right there. Number 3. This is the 7th segment of the grand universe is geographically far larger than the Milky Way. The diameter of the Milky Way is around 100 to 200,000 light years. However, the local sheet, as we heard about from Nigel, has a diameter of about 30 million light years. And I include the many galaxies of the local sheet to be within the 7th segment of the grand universe, with Orvonton, which is Milky Way, as the inhabited hub of the superuniverse. And this is the local group, so just a refresher here. So here's Andromeda, and the local group is by consensus gravitationally combined by gravitation. Eventually, scientists are saying that Andromeda is either going to accrete with the Milky Way, or it's going to be a flyby and then come back, but eventually it probably will accrete with the Milky Way, as will the other galaxies within the local group. It's about 10 million light years in diameter. Here is the local sheet, which we saw earlier. I'm so glad that Nigel got us into that, because now you know what I'm talking about here. This is the local sheet, and it's astronomer Marshall McCall of York called it the Council of Giants. It includes our local group, which is, of course, this is our local group right here, with the Milky Way there and Andromeda there. But it's surrounded by 5 other local groups. And all these large galaxies are within a diameter of about 20 million light years. They are traveling at the same rate. They are on a relatively flat plane, with the Milky Way nearest to the middle. I hypothesize that this is possibly the entire space segment of the 7th superuniverse. Number 4, I speculate that over trillions of years, the local group and the local sheet will become one massive galaxy as it accretes and is stabilized into the ever-expanding flagship galaxy, which is called Orvonton, the Milky Way. This would hypothetically extend the Orvonton Milky Way boundaries of inhabitation and organization. Now, I'm not asking you to agree with these 4 suppositions on the scale of Orvonton, but I should present it to put in perspective my concept of NGC 2419 as the home of Uversa. All right, now we're ready to get into the nitty-gritty here. This is everything, and I mean everything, that the Urantia papers have to say about the location of Uversa. I will analyze each quote and harmonize them with the conclusion that NGC 2419 is where Uversa is located. So let's take these quotes one at a time. All right, number 1. Here is, you got to analyze what you need to do with these quotes, first of all, is analyze these words that all the sectors and divisions of Orvonton are in rotation around Uversa, and the definition of the word about and how these 10 major sectors whirl about the Uversa headquarters of Orvonton. Let's see. Betty Zare, you're a reading specialist, right? Was. Well, okay. I want you to confirm this with me. In complicated English, the word about is used here as a prepositional phrase functioning as an adverb. Now, this means that the word about is defined as in or somewhat near the Uversa headquarters. For example, I ride my bicycle about my neighborhood. About means in or somewhat near. And that's the way this word is used in paper 15. So you need to go, okay, so this is where I want you to get an idea about, this is where y'all got to wake up again, because I'm going to make you do some work here. Are you ready? Here we go. I want you, everybody, put your finger up in front of your face. Okay? Right where your eye level is, okay? Now I want you to start whirling it about like this. Now, what you are doing is mimicking the rotation of the 10 major sectors of the Milky Way. They're all going in rotation about once every billion years. That's some recent research, which I'd love to get into, but never mind. 1 billion years it takes for the galaxy to go around in once, okay? Now keep it up there. You got to keep it going. Now, here's the rest of it. here's the next thing you got to do. Take your other finger and start going around it this way. Now, does anybody, if you really get good at this, you got to bring this one around. You got to bring this one around 3 times for every once that you go around with this. Because that is the way that it's doing it. That's the way the NGC is going over the Milky Way, over the pole, all the time. So you see what I'm saying here about this is verifying for me, at least, that all of these sectors are in rotation and around about and whirl about. And I just think outside of the box in terms of what these words mean and how they're being used. Okay, we're going to come back to that, so you might want to practice while we're... Okay, number 2. The Uversa government presides and functions in one of the greater systems. There's the greater systems. It belongs to one of the greater systems situated near the astronomical center of the entire space segment, and I say including the local sheet. NGC 2419 is certainly one of the greater systems, and I've already demonstrated that with you factually. And it certainly can provide many nearby suns. It can definitely share the light of nearby suns within it at some place. Now, so in my model, Milky Way Urantia is the flagship galaxy of our space segment, and Uversa in NGC 2419 is the physical center of power control. Number 3. Uversa's central location is probably on the periphery of NGC 2419. This would put Uversa near the center, but wait till we get to the next slide to really get confused about this. Large red giant suns, this is more of the research from NASA a couple years ago. Large red giant suns are rotating in the center of NGC 2419, so Uversa would probably be further from the center of NGC 2419, sharing the light of nearby suns. As we know that it has several suns, it also has a sun sharing light that has without heat. It's another one of the things about Uversa which is unique. All right, now paper 32. This one is going to take a little more time for me to get through. And that's because it can get pretty complicated here if you let it. And I figured there's no way I can get around this without letting it get complicated. So here we go. It is possible, and I need Betty's confirmation on this too, because we're working with English here. It is possible to hypothesize from the first sentence that the word "and" separates the identification of Uversa and that great sun cluster which functions as the physical or astronomic center. Now, English examples of that kind of separation with the word "and" are like cars and trucks, boys and girls. They're not the same thing, but it is possible that the word "and" can separate categories while grouping them together. So this is something to think about. And here's the consequences that I have for this hypothesis. The first and most popular interpretation of this sentence avers that Uversa and that great sun cluster are both referring to the same thing, which is a greater system, which is over 200,000 light years away. Most people think they're really talking about the same thing here. The and is not separating them. They're the same thing. Okay? However, the second interpretation avers that Uversa and that great sun cluster are separate. Each are differently far removed from Satania. Uversa refers to the greater system, which is over 200,000 light years away, which I hypothesize is NGC 2419. That great sun cluster would probably refer to the central bulge of the Milky Way, hypothesizing that the central bulge of the Milky Way is really where something I'm going to get into a little later called the Barycentre. Now, this central bulge would be the astronomic gravitational center of Urantia as the accretion takes place with all the galaxies over trillions and trillions of years. The center of the galaxy is, as Nigel pointed out, is only about 27,000 light years away. The center of the Milky Way is just too near to be Uversa. You cannot put Uversa there because it's only 27,000 light years away. And that was the belief even back then, back in the 1930s. They finally nailed that number down, and it's pretty accurate to this day. The next sentence, right here, where it starts with Jerusalem, the next sentence indicates that the physical center is over 200,000 light years to the physical center of the superuniverse of Urantia. Now, this may validate the first interpretation, making Uversa and NGC 2419 the same, if one believes that An separates Uversa from that great sun cluster. Then Uversa is being referred to as the physical center of power control for the material evolution of the superuniverse, rather than being the center of the Milky Way. Because we know that from Uversa, 1,000 power centers of the third order assume direction and partial control of the superuniverse gravitas circuits, and that all happens from Uversa. No doubt about that. So regardless, though, of which way you want to interpret and, it doesn't really matter in terms of whether or not NGC 2419 is compatible with either interpretation, because it's compatible with both. Uversa is near the center in either interpretation. So pick yours and go with it. This is the local sheet, as I said before. And the playing field of the seventh superuniverse is hypothetically very, very large. The model of the local sheet as the space segment of our superuniverse is strengthened by the fact that the Milky Way is nearest to the center. And because the Milky Way is closest to the center of the local sheet, then it and Uversa are perhaps near the Barycentre of the seventh superuniverse. Now, the Barycentre is an astronomical term to denote the specific location of the common center of mass around which two or more bodies revolve. Now, for example, the Sun is the Barycentre of our solar system. Uversa is repeatedly delineated as near the center, near the astronomical center, central location, and physical or astronomic center. They're pretty clear about that. Now, the Barycentre of the superuniverse number 7 must be near the vicinity of the Milky Way, whether it is within the central bulge, within NGC 2419, or at some ever-changing spot near at a near point within the local group or the local sheet. Now here's a side view of the Council of Giants, and you see how right in the center here is our local group. And that strengthens my model, which really has nothing specifically to do with my conjecture about NGC 2419. But it does strengthen my model that indeed it is near the center and all of these galaxies are rotating around it and eventually will accrete into the Milky Way and make a huge, huge area for us to play in. Now, I'll admit it right up front, there is obviously absolutely no research that says that the local sheet is gravitationally bound to the Milky Way or anything. There's absolutely none. As a matter of fact, you might find most astrophysicists that say that's a bunch of hooey, that it would be. But that's just a part of my suppositions. So, but I think it's interesting that it's right there in the middle and going around. Back to number 4. The phrase, "in the dense diameter of the Milky Way," has an astronomical meaning which indicates direction. So NGC 2419 and Uversa is in the direction of the dense diameter of the Milky Way. NGC 2419 lies near the anticentre through Urantia, which is possibly quite near Jerusalem. I don't think they're far apart, I mean cosmically. The anticentre of each run through the dense diameter of the Milky Way toward NGC 2419. NGC 2419 is not above or below the dense diameter, it is directly through it. Links in NGC 2419 are located in the direction of the dense diameter of the Milky Way. Now, back to this, it says, from Jerusalem, the headquarters of Satania, it is over 200,000 light years to the physical center of the superuniverse of Urantia. Now, the average distance to NGC 2419 from Urantia is 245,000 light years. And that's the average. This is consistent with the phrase over 200,000 light years. The outermost system, which we see down here, of inhabited worlds to the center of the superuniverse is a trifle less than 250,000 light years. So, thus, the outermost system, it must be referring to Nebadon. The outermost system is, in my opinion, in Nebadon, and that is because Nebadon is being referenced here in this paragraph. Nebadon is now well out towards the edge of Urantia from the outermost system. So I assume they're talking that the outermost system is in Nebadon. It's not some far away, distant system, but it is within Nebadon. So the reason that's important is because if it is just a trifle less, and they said trifle. Now, they don't just say over or more than. They actually really want us to narrow this down a little bit. So they say a trifle less, okay? So it's a trifle less than 250,000 light years distant. Now, if that is the average distance of that outermost system, if it is, assumption. And if 245,000 light years is an average distance to NGC 2419, if they are both averages, they're not very far apart. They are actually quite close together, which to me is consistent with the idea that it's within Nebadon, and Nebadon cosmically is not very large compared to the entire Milky Way. So, that is the best I can do, folks, about convincing you that what we have here is the location of Uversa. And, you know, I can't wait to wake up on the Mansion Worlds and have a cup of Urantia coffee with you all and sit back and eat a Urantia cookie. That coffee's Mount Jerusalem grown, And we're going to just have a good time talking about all the errors we made and just be thrilled with the opportunity to go forward in our universe search for the wonders of this great universe. It's going to be a great time we're all having together. I would like to verify one thing that makes this symposium so great. It's really important for us to nail down the science and to apply it to the Urantia book with what I call the Triad of Verification, trying to get a really good synthesis of understanding, because but as ascending man reaches inward and paradiseward for the God experience, he will likewise be reaching outward and spaceward for an energy understanding of the material cosmos. The progression of science is not limited to the terrestrial life of man, but his universe and superuniverse ascension experience will to no small degree be the study of energy transmutation and material metamorphosis. You know how important it is now for us to really get into this stuff, and I'm so proud of this happening. It's a wonderful experience. But this basically concludes my presentation. I hope I've engendered some interest in you about the location of Uversa. I don't believe the revelators would have given us all of these clues if they didn't wish for future generations to decipher the facts and eventually to develop frameworks with a lesser degree of error. Well, I've done the best that I can with this arcane subject, and I hope that more science will validate or nullify my conclusions in the future. We as believers and devotees of the Urantia revelation are driven by a God-given sense of curiosity to clarify the truth in our earnest attempt to unify reality. We must decipher and interpret Urantia book English usage and language interpretation. We must couple epical revelation with prohibitively revealed cosmology from the early 20th century. We must study current science and seek to blend it with epical revelation. Rigorous study utilizing the Triad of Verification will eventually bring greater insight into reality. We humans are not given an over-revelation. We would be deprived of the vigorous thinking and spiritual advancement. For epical revelation, it would be tyranny for celestial personalities to reveal more than current civilization can understand. So it is incumbent upon all of us to continue this vigorous passion, take delight in cultivating courageous and independent cosmic thinking, and boy, do we give thanks to our sovereign of Nebadon. Is he not a great guy? And his universe mother spirit. Thank you, Father and Mother. Thanks to all the celestial ministers and teachers and administrators who undertook this great task of providing epically revealed truth to our generation. So may we represent this revelation well.